We're going to spend the next 4 or 5 days talking about your life, and we're going to try to equip you with the tools to see your whole life as it's going to play out. Now that's a very ambitious task, but you'll be surprised that so many of us actually don't have a grip on our life. We think we know what we're doing, but we haven't looked at the whole picture. The Bhakti Yoga knowledge gives you the skills to see your whole life from birth to death and then analyze what is happiness, what is success. I'm sure that you all want to be happy. But the surprising truth is that more than ever, people don't know what happiness is. We're going to try to show you that there's a story buried underneath your life. We're going to try to show you how your life is built upon various conceptions that all form a story. Now, where did this story come from that's motivating your life? From family, from society, from the media, from school, wherever it came from. And right now we're not saying whether it's good or bad, but we're just trying at first to get you to see that there is indeed a story to your life that's shaping how you see things, shaping how you react to things, shaping your expectations, your disappointments. If we can dig out from under the ground that underlying story, we can then start to see if we're really making progress towards happiness and success. Because our very notions of happiness and success, even though quite undefined, are still part of the story at the foundation of our life. So let's first meditate on that point. Whether you want to admit it or not, you've taken on board various assumptions, various conceptions that are the bedrock foundation of your life. And again, we don't want anyone getting uptight. We're not saying those stories are wrong, but at least recognize that you've taken on baggage. There's no such thing, according to the Bhakti Yoga knowledge, as an innocent birth. So if you want to truly get a grip on the story shaping your life, you have to begin even before birth. But most people, you'd be surprised to know, most people have a difficult time recognizing even the stories that are shaping their life from birth. So then how are they going to go deeper into their life's history, into previous lifetimes? The conditioning that builds up birth after birth. It's very debilitating, very injurious to think one life is all in all. But somehow the Western so-called civilization has made such an industrious, feverish, passionate attempt to squeeze all of existence into one lifetime and convince you, that's it. You've got one party. One party to attend, and when it's over, it's over. So naturally, that's going to make you just try to cram everything into a few magic moments. All right, those magic moments, if you live a full lifespan according to today's statistics, the magic moment may last a few decades. It may appear and disappear repeatedly over the course of a few decades. But still, just see the pressure on you. It's like a football match. There's a certain time, and you've got to score, right? The pressure is on you. And you all feel that pressure. You feel career pressure. You feel relationship pressure. You feel the pressures to acquire all the things that a so-called successful person should have these days. You should have a job with lots of upward mobility, right? A job that makes you feel good about yourself. You should have a successful relationship, or 2 or 3 or 4. 0 relationships. That's normal these days, right? But if somehow or other, amidst the series, you can have a few happy, passionate moments, and so be it. It's got to be practical. Get what you can while you can. You want social respect. You want social stature. When people take note of you, you want them to think that you're a person who has attained something. And of course, you'll do a bit of charity work for others. A little dash of that. So just think, where did you get these notions from? We're not saying that the notions that form your story, we're not saying that either the notions or the story is good or bad. We haven't gotten to that point yet. We're passing no value judgments so far. But just think, who gave you the story? You can't see into previous lifetimes. If you're in tune with the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, you know that Krishna says, never was there a time when you were not an individual. Never will there be a time when you're not an individual. The non-material self has no beginning or end, although the body and mind are always changing. So you can't see into previous lifetimes, but at least let's try to see this lifetime. Actually, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that someone whose eyes are trained in non-material knowledge, transcendental knowledge, can see the cumulative influences that have piled up from previous lifetimes. But anyway, let's just try to understand this lifetime, since according to Western civilization, this lifetime is all that there is. Okay, let's look at this lifetime. And what do you see? Your parents have implanted in you certain values. When I was a young lad, my mother was very strong to implant certain values in me. She told me, if you want to be successful in life, you have to be 3 things. You have to be a scholar, you have to be an entrepreneur, and you have to be a Christian. Those 3 things, you're sure to be successful. And as some of you may have already heard, she gave me some advice which I never had an opportunity to use. I remember I was about 8 years old, and for some reason she decided to tell me this about relationships. She said, always remember, when you get older and you start contemplating relationships and forming relationships and thinking to settle down, always remember that romance without finance is a nuisance. Never had a chance to use that one. So I remember, I'm telling you this just so you will feel more uninhibited about checking out your own story and the assumptions that form your life. When I was 8 or 9 years old, my mother would have the uncles, her brothers, interrogate Okay, you're 8 years old now. Have you been thinking about your career? So I had to come up with something. So I remember the U.S., is such an intensely competitive society with no social welfare system. So from birth, you have to be trained to swim at the front of the pack, otherwise you drown. It's sink or swim. And not only just swim, but you have to be in the front. So they would ask me, I was just 8 years old, have you thought about your career? What kind of job are you going to be doing? And I wouldn't know what to say. So I remember looking at the newspaper, and there were pictures of petroleum engineers wearing the hard hats. So as an 8-year-old, I thought, that's pretty cool to wear a hat like that. Hard hat, looking at dials and gauges. And so the next time they asked me, what do you want to be? I said, I want to be a chemical engineer. Oh, very good, my boy. My mother would race to the children's bookshop where they had a whole series of books written for kids. Your future as a chemical engineer. Is the UK, is that intense? So she'd come home with, from the children's bookshop, a little book, Your Future as a Chemical Engineer, and I'd read it, and then I would change my mind, of course. 8-year-old kid, you change your mind. Next time they'd ask me, so are you still into being a chemical engineer? But I was reading the New York Times, especially the job ads. And I noticed stuff like it was full of vacancies for investment analysts, portfolio analysts. So then when I was 9, I told my uncles, I want to be an investment analyst. Oh, very good. Meaning my mother would race to the bookshop, come back with another book, Your Future as a Stock Analyst, Share Market Analyst. So, again, I'm saying this so you'll feel you'll loosen up a bit and start to recognize your own stories without feeling uptight or embarrassed or secretive. We want this gathering this week to be very pivotal for you. We just don't want it to be an ordinary social affair. Yes, there'll be socializing and so many nice people to meet and talk with, but we want to together go deeper. And let's be a bit brave too, because we're going to be covering things from birth through old age to death. I know old age and death you don't think about that now, right? You're thinking about coping with the moment. You're thinking about coping with the next 5 years. Your studies, the job market. What will the job market be like when you finish your studies? Will there still be a job market when you finish your studies? Are you studying the right thing? Will there still be a demand for persons in the field that you're studying? These are the anxieties of the day. When should you have a relationship? Should you have a relationship right now? If you do, should you tell anyone about it? All these pressures are on you, but still, let's not be afraid to take a look at the whole picture from birth to death. Because you are moving from birth to death. When we talk about happiness, it can mean so many different things to different people. Those of you who have read a book I've written called Hiding an Unnatural Happiness, you know that in the beginning I assembled a list of different ways that people think of happiness. So let's see what you what you consider to be happiness. Or maybe I should ask you, first of all, who'll be brave enough to say your type of happiness or a happiness you've noticed in others? It's always easy to talk about others. Anyone? No one here wants to be happy? No.
Feeling good, relaxed.
Feeling good, relaxed. Huh?
With yourself, with the others.
Feeling good and feeling relaxed in a social context, it sounds like you're saying. Not that you're alone, but you're embedded with others, and together with others you kind of feel a good vibration.
Yes, that as well. Also alone. Alone is very important as well.
How do you feel happiness alone?
Feel happy with yourself, within yourself.
So there you are alone, let's say in the forest or in your room, and you just say, I feel happy within myself.
I don't think you can force it.
So, is there anything more to it than that? I'm all alone and I feel happy.
Rid of anxiety. So you're anxious about things. So you're not anxious about things, and that makes you happy.
So you have some moments where you're not anxious about things. And those moments are not influenced by intoxication.
Yes.
I often tell the story of how I was speaking at the University of Manchester, and I asked the students, because it was Thursday, I asked them, Friday night is coming. What are you going to do on Friday night? And they all looked at me like I was crazy. Like, what do you mean, what are we going to do on a Friday night? These were students who were going to be engineers and doctors and lawyers. So I said, well, you know, I travel over the world. I like hearing from people about how they live their life. Well, I'm just asking an innocent question. What do you do on a Friday night? They were still shocked. You don't know? Everyone. What does everyone do on a Friday night? They said, we get completely wasted. So then I said, well, after you get wasted on Friday night, how do you feel on Saturday afternoon when you wake up? They said, we feel horrible. But, they said, it was all worth it for a few hours of flying on Friday night. We feel horrible Saturday afternoon, 3 o'clock when we wake up. But it was so much fun on that Friday night. We forgot all our anxieties. We forgot all our troubles. And one young lady who was on her way to being a medical student, she said to me, and you know what the funniest thing is? It's when you wake up Saturday afternoon and there's someone there next to you and you can't remember how he got there. And then Monday morning you talk about it with your girlfriends and you all laugh about it. That's life. So just for a few hours of freedom from anxiety. That freedom is fueled, that false freedom is fueled by intoxication. You're willing to suffer for that and put yourself in so many grotesque situations, all in the name of enjoyment. Someone here had their hand up about happiness. Yes, you had your hand up?
So, that's a little bit what you just said before, is the fact to be surrounded, beloved. It could be by your family or by friends.
So embedded in a warm, loving, social context.
I don't think that, I love being alone, but I think more and more that being alone is not happiness. I think happiness is contact with other people, like families or friends or...
So just living and breathing and interacting with others.
Meaning and purpose and those kind of things.
Meaning and purpose. Okay. Now, don't mind me poking a bit because we're just, trying to stir things so we can go deeper. But a lot of terrifying people in the world's history have had meaning and a purpose. So is it just having any old meaning and any purpose? You know, that's why people become terrorists. It's a main reason. They want to feel their life has meaning and purpose. Can you describe what the opposite is like? A life without meaning and purpose?
Quite shallow.
What does it look like? Give us a snapshot of a life without meaning and purpose.
It's flat.
Hmm?
Flat.
Flat.
One-dimensional.
But you're still doing things, right? But as Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, no one can stop acting even for a moment. So whether you have a purpose or meaning or not, you're still doing things. That means there's a purpose. Sense activity. But perhaps what you mean is there's no higher meaning or purpose? Or you really mean just any old meaning or purpose will do?
High real, that does.
Higher meaning. And then the question would be, well, how high? You don't want your meaning or purpose to get so high that it interferes with your bottom line, right? That's a big fear about especially spirituality, bhakti. If I get too much into bhakti, it might affect my bottom line. I'll lose my head in the heavens and forget about, the practicalities of coping with the workplace, the academic world. Isn't that a big fear? If I get into the Maha Mantra too much, occasional kirtan here and there will do you no harm. But it's getting into daily japa, you just don't know where it's going to take you, right? The idea of bhakti is nice, but our security, our freedom, all depends on our bottom line. Isn't that the predominant notion? So in other words, you don't want your meaning or purpose to get so high because you're afraid that it'll leave you open on the ground level. It's like leaving all the windows and doors of your house open at night while you soar through the night sky with your high purpose. But yes, you're right. Generally speaking, you pointed out what a lot of people think. I want my life to have meaning. That means I want to do meaningful work. Yes? I want meaningful relationships. We're going to try to go deeper, though. I thank you for your presenting that point. Because as undefined as it is, most persons don't go any deeper than that. And in a normal society, in a normal gathering, that's all right. But we want to do something special this week. That's okay? All right. So therefore, again, don't mind if I poke a bit. We are trying to stir things up for everyone's betterment and my own education. Happiness. Other definitions of happiness. Yes.
Having an understanding of your own identity. No, I find that maybe understanding myself better can help me then direct where I should be going with my time. And maybe then.
Again, just as our friend here said about purpose and meaning, how deep does your self-understanding want to go?
As deep as possible.
Deep as possible, are you sure? Do you want to go beyond mere physiology and psychology? Do you want to go into the mysteries of the spirit soul?
Yes, I think so.
You're in school now or working?
I just graduated a year ago.
When you applied for school and when you began working, did any, in the interview or on the application, online application, did anyone ask you, do you know who you are?
No.
It's just not relevant, right, for living life today, to know what you are, who you are. And certainly you never saw any question or heard any question in the interview. Can you control your mind and senses? Who cares about that? So this is the kind of so-called civilization that we're living in. No one cares about what is the self in the deepest sense, and no one cares about whether you are the master of yourself, whether you can control your mind and senses. It's not relevant. In fact, there's fear. If you can control your mind and senses, your life must be very dry, devoid of pleasure. Because the so-called pleasures that everyone knows about are all based on uncontrolled senses. A consumer society means uncontrolled senses, a festival of uncontrolled senses. And you're supposed to work hard just so you can participate in that festival of uncontrolled senses. Just to get an unlimited pass to that festival. And then people will appreciate you. You've done well. You succeeded. Any other definitions of happiness? Yes.
Contribute something you're proud of to like the human race.
Contribute something you're proud of to the human race. We're going to be talking about that human race in terms of actually running a race. And how you want to contribute something to that race. Contribute something you're proud of. It's a good point. We'll be covering that. We're going to see some surprising insights into how to help society. What is real help for society? What is a real contribution? Once we get our video system up and running, we'll be showing some video clips that will be good thinking experiments for us. Anyone who hasn't said anything before? Yeah?
When your expectations are met, that makes you happy.
When your expectations are met. So when a person meets your expectations, you're happy with that person. You have met my expectations.
Yeah.
I know it's unreasonable, but yeah.
Well, of course, your expectations would be reasonable. Yes?
Can I just add a question to that point? So sometimes what you want isn't what you need. So if you set your own expectation, would it be correct to think that you may not be happy even then, once they've been met?
Well, the average person today, in case you haven't noticed, cannot distinguish between wants and needs. If I want it, it's a need. It's a basic human need because I want it. You remember, you're living in a consumer society. Do you want to have your nails done or do you need to have your nails done? It's hard distinguishing between the two, right? You probably tell your friends, I need to have my nails done, right? Because you want, it's a need. This is the outcome of those who design a consumer society. They don't want you to be able to see the difference. They want to blur the line.
Well, isn't it that they make you think that you need it so you want it? Then in your mind it's need, but in actuality it's just a desire.
Yes, but as I said, they purposely blur the line for fun and profit. And then, of course, everyone needs a job, so they say, look, this consumerism is creating jobs, so just play your part. Okay, yeah, add a little bhakti in, whatever, however you find meaning. Scuba diving, skiing, bhakti, whatever. Just keep buying, just keep purchasing. Just keep the machine moving. it was mentioned about happiness being when your expectations are met. That comes close to one definition of happiness by the German philosopher Nietzsche. He gave what you'd probably call a Germanic definition of happiness, which seemed to have been responsible for 2 world wars. Happiness is when obstacles are overcome and your power expands. That's happiness. What do you think? Sounds very Germanic, though. When your power is expanding and when obstacles are overcome, that's happiness. What do you think about that?
It's conditional. It's very conditional.
Depends on the context.
Very conditional?
I mean, it's conditional as in only then will you feel happy when that has happened. But I
Well-
guess happiness is a bit more.
Well, tell me about happiness as you know it that's not conditional.
I can't say I've experienced that because I'm pretty much doing conditional.
Ah, very good, very good.
Conditional.
You got a gold star. Yes.
But that would be,
We don't know what is unconditional happiness.
yeah.
In fact, we really don't know what is happiness. Anyway, I'll read you a list of different ways that happiness can be defined. Whether you can call it happiness, cheerfulness, satisfaction. Everyone's in complete anxiety about how to get these things, right? Just think. You've passed a few moments without being happy, and you know everyone else is happy. Isn't it a horrible feeling? In order to be a credible human being these days, you have to have anxiety about your happiness, right? Because you're supposed to be happy. So to be a normal human being today, you have to constantly question yourself, practically at every moment. Am I happy right now? You have to stare at your own navel. Am I happy? Is my job making me happy? Am I doing what I'm passionate about? Am I doing what I love? My relationship. Am I really happy with my relationship? Is this really the right person for me? You have to constantly ask yourself those questions all the time, right? In order to be a real human being. The Vedas say, now that you have the human form of life, you must strive for enlightenment. But what we have going on today is, now that you have a human form of life, you must be in anxiety about your happiness. You can't leave yourself alone, can you? Am I happy right now? Am I with the right person? You have to constantly interrogate yourself. That is considered happiness? There's so much anxiety about happiness. It should make an intelligent person wonder, what's going on? This is not real happiness. But anyway, I'll read you a list of different ways that happiness can be defined. There's that immediate short-term feeling of, this moment feels good. You've all experienced that? Feeling good right now. I won't ask you what you were doing. Then there were times when you felt a short-lived psychological surge or jolt. You just happened to be in a good mood. And you had that short-lived feeling that things are going my way. Some say that happiness is like an upbeat, cheery disposition encoded in your genes. We'll talk more about that. We have anyone studying genetics here? Well, IT, accounting, engineers. No doctors? No medical scientists? Okay. What's another definition of happiness? One the media is throwing at us all the time. Sheer physicality and sensory stimulation. Then there's the raw power of possession and control. That's lurking underneath many times, but often these days it comes right out into the open. The raw desire to control, possess. Has anyone ever grabbed onto you and said, mine? That passionate urge just to call someone your own. You will make me happy. You are mine. I guess that's only in the movies, right? But it's in the movies because that's what people want at the basis level. And they call that love. That someone bends according to your desires. And you will bend according to their desires. And then you'll be happy. Just like in the movies. And just like all the movie stars are so happy. Another definition of happiness is capability and contentment. You feel capable, you feel expert. I know certain things. I've got skills. I've got self-worth. And then what someone else already mentioned, interpersonal connectivity and harmony. You feel comfortable in the social flow around you, the network of relationships. They're pleasing to you. Of course, those social networks also bring distress. And then finally, there's just living in the moment and letting it be. That's happiness. When we look at more academic definitions of happiness, we can get a bit more specific. In case you don't know, happiness science has been around for the past 25 years, and there's so much study about what is happiness and how people think they're happy. This just started, this happiness science, in the mid-90s. Before the mid-90s, it was considered very strange for an academic to study happiness, because everyone was supposed to know what happiness is. Now, it wasn't strange back then if you studied depression, but to study happiness was considered quite odd, because what's the big deal about being happy? But now, as everyone is in such anxiety about happiness, there's a big market demand for happiness science. Maybe the academics can tell us how to be happy. So here's some academic versions of happiness. Happiness is a combination of frequent positive emotions plus the sense that your life is good. So you feel a series of positive emotions, and then there's an overall sense that your life is all right. You can relate to that definition? Sounds like it could be near the target. Supposedly then your life has benefits for yourself and others. It's good for you, it's good for your family, it's good for the workplace, if you're happy. Happy workers. Anyone here in human resources? Happy workers whether in a factory or in the office, are more creative, they're more dedicated, less absenteeism. So in this way, happiness can be measured in terms of the material benefits to those around you and to your situation. Then, you can define happiness as doing meaningful activities, in the sense that you get a feeling that you're part of something bigger than you. You ever done that before? You've done something and you felt that you were part of a greater whole, that you were playing a small role but in a big picture, and you felt good about that. You never done that? Can you give me an example?
Sports team.
Exactly, a sports team. You struggled together, you had a victory, right? You experienced defeat together. There's something about a human being that likes to be part of a bigger picture, belonging to a cause greater than yourself. And especially when you're part of that bigger picture and you're doing something, you get so intensely absorbed in it that you lose track of time. Then you know you found it. This is it. You get that feeling that you're at one with the music, so to speak. You get that feeling about whatever you're doing in life. You're part of a family, you're part of a sports team, you're part of a work scene that's accomplishing goals that are bigger than you. You'd be surprised to know, maybe, that the most popular definitions of happiness come from geneticists. Geneticists, they're looking at your DNA, and what have they uncovered? According to them, 50% of your happiness is predetermined by your genetic makeup. 50%. Western science is currently very much in love with genetics. So the idea is that just like some people have a genetic predisposition to being fat, others have it for being skinny, so much so that no matter how much they diet or exercise, their weight never varies too much from a particular genetic set point. Similarly, your happiness, 50% of your happiness is said to be like that. So geneticists raise the point that you can see some children are born with a cheery disposition, others are born with a very gloomy disposition. It's all about their genes. So if we take that standard way of judging happiness, then we would say 50% of our happiness is already preset just by our genes. What else is there then? Supposedly, 10% of your happiness is bound up in circumstances that are very difficult to change. You can change them, but it's not easy to change your job. You just can't do that overnight. To change where you live, you can't do that overnight. To change your marriage, you can't do that overnight. So you got 50% that's set by your genes, 10% that's set by your circumstances of life, which are very hard to change. So what does that leave you with? Leaves you with 40% window of opportunity that you can affect with your willpower, with your intentionality. Are you satisfied with that? 40% is left to you to make of life as you like according to your attitude. But the bhakti texts say no. You have 100% window of opportunity. Why? Because you're not physiology, you're not psychology, you're not your genes. The bhakti text and the applied bhakti technology give you existence on the non-material platform, which is wide open, which is unconditioned by material arrangements. So that's the advantage, the unique advantage that Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita. Normally speaking, you would always be curtailed, hemmed in by material factors, genes, circumstances, the structure of your own mind, time and space. But because bhakti is a non-material phenomenon, you have 100% opportunity. The window is 100% wide. Interfering with that 100% wide open window, though, are the various stories that we've inherited about what is happiness, what is success. Any questions so far? Could you see that you've got 100% opportunity on the spiritual platform? Although the material plane is loaded with all kinds of preset parameters and boundaries. So our focus this week is going to be on what will you do with the 100%. Do you recognize you have the 100%? And what will you do with it? You've got to deal with making that transit from birth to death. You've got to deal with old age. And you need a plan. How your life is going to be successful, not just for a few decades in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, but how you're going to be successful in old age. How you're going to be successful in death. Is it too early to think about that? So bhakti is all about a career. It's a lifetime pursuit. At least one lifetime. Of course, this one lifetime is just one in a series of many lifetimes. But if we can take the predominant Western conception that one life is all you get, and say, okay, what are you going to do about that one lifetime? Then we can start to be able to deal with other lifetimes. So I want to leave you with one final point from Srimad Bhagavatam, the advanced bhakti text, the graduate study to Bhagavad Gita. There it is said that there's only two kinds of persons who can be happy in this world. Let's see what category we fit into. Only two kinds of persons who can be happy in this world. The first kind, you probably exempt yourself from this category. The first kind is the completely enlightened, self-realized soul. Anyone out there? Completely free from material identification. Completely free from identifying with the body and mind. Totally experienced with the spiritual energy and the source of both matter and the spiritual energy. Living in complete harmony with Krishna, the ultimate source. That kind of person can be happy in this world, because that kind of person knows he or she is not part of this world. That kind of person knows that he or she is beyond physiology and psychology. So you say, no one here is in that category. Okay. What about the other category that can be happy in this world? Let's see if you fit into that one. I'll warn you, I don't think you fit into that category either. What is it? The complete materialistic fool. What you don't know won't hurt you. Work hard, party hard, don't care about tomorrow. Just be a slave of a consumer society. Satisfy your senses day to day, night to night. There's nothing higher than that. Anyone fit into that category? Of course not. You wouldn't be here if you did. You wouldn't be wasting your time here. So, all right. Srimad Bhagavatam says only two types of persons can be happy in this world: the completely enlightened, self-realized soul, and the complete materialistic fool can think he or she is happy based on so much ignorance. You're not in either category. So what does the Bhagavatam say about that? Anyone know? Everyone in between has to be in anxiety. Because you're neither completely enlightened, nor are you a complete fool. So you have to be in anxiety. You've got one foot in both worlds. You have some spiritual curiosity, inquisitiveness. You have a sense that there must be something higher. That's why you come here this week. At the same time, there's material attachment. Well, this body can't be all bad. The mind can't be all bad. There must be some way to have good physical and mental stimulations while at the same time being spiritual. There must be a way. There's got to be a way. So see what I mean about being a hybrid? By having one foot in both worlds. We want to be material and spiritual. But the Bhagavatam says, then you have to be in anxiety. You're neither purely spiritual nor purely material. The pure materialist can pretend he or she is happy, living in ignorance, like a gross animal. And of course, the completely enlightened, self-realized is actually happy because he or she is thriving beyond matter. But everyone in between has to suffer some anxiety. So we talked about the story underneath your life. And I hope you're starting to develop the courage to wrestle with that story. Where did you get the story from? You should start taking note of that. The parental influences loaded into you, the family expectations loaded into you, what the media has molded you into, what your society and friends have instilled in you. Most persons won't look at all this. Most persons live their life as if on autopilot. Autopilot doesn't mean just doing things blindly in a way that you would ordinarily think. Autopilot means not questioning the stories that have been implanted in you. Because it's those stories that are pushing you onward. Who here would be brave enough to say that they recognize some stories implanted in them? Now, we're not saying whether the stories are good or bad yet. We're just wanting to recognize that we've been implanted. Stories have been implanted in us. Who can recognize some stories? Yes.
Good example is the standard, grow up, get a job, you'll be happy. And then you go out, you get a job, and you're not happy. Something went wrong somewhere.
That's a good one. Yes.
You need to work hard at school so you don't become a bin man working on the streets.
Okay. I mean, I certainly had my stories implanted in me about that. There are other stories implanted in me. I remember when I was maybe, 15 years old, one of my uncles took me aside and said, you're 15 years old. No doubt you're going to be dating and considering girlfriends, but we just want you to know one thing. The family elders want you to understand. This family believes in good genes. Anyone that you'll be dating, we want to check out because we believe in good genes. So he was implanting in me the family story, you know? Ladies, no stories implanted in you? Yes.
I was always told that after my exams I'll be left alone, I can do what I want, and that never happened. Summer came and I was never left alone by my parents.
They told after your
I
exam.
will be left alone, I can do what I want to do.
After which exams?
After my A-level, my college exams, and then after college exams came my university exams, after university exams came my my job, and then after that, they're still at me. So it's a never-ending cycle.
Ah. Okay, that's a good one. And remember, we're not saying whether it's good or bad yet. Yes?
One that, since a young boy, parents would always say, when they saw that we're going to spirituality, do it, but don't go too deep. That's one that always.
Go to the temple once a year for Janmashtami.
Occasional Sundays.
Put a little something in the hundi. Some coins.
Not too much.
Right. Yeah?
What I found a lot from my parents, but also just at university, is if you haven't got a job straight away from finishing university and you're not on the ladder to your career, then you're considered quote unquote a bit of a failure. So like if someone's gone and they're working at a big firm and they see you've not got a job yet, they think a bit lowly of you, and some people, and sometimes your parents think like you need a job straight, you get straight into it, whereas the other option is just taking some time out to figure out what you want to do. So that's something I growing up.
I did that when I graduated. I had to deal with all kinds of corporate offers, but I decided to do a timeout because I thought, if I don't sort myself out now at the age of, what was I? I was 21 and a half when I graduated. If I don't sort myself out now, I could be swept away until I'm 65. So I had all kinds of job offers, AT&T, General Motors, General Electric. I guess it's like, maybe it is in the UK, if you graduate from Oxford or Cambridge, you really don't have to look you don't look for a job. The job offers come piling on your desk. So it's like that in the States. You graduate from Yale or Harvard or Stanford, you don't really worry about looking for jobs. But I thought, while the job offers are piling up, I need to take a time out. I need to figure out who I am and what is the real goal in life. So I worked, but I got a mellow job as like a high school counselor. So the parents were satisfied in that they saw it was a temporary thing. You know. Okay, he's working. It's a respectable job, helping others. And gradually he'll gather his enthusiasm for the corporate world. But meanwhile, I was reading Prabhupada's books 4 hours a day. I did that for 6 months straight, reading. Let's see, I graduated in May of 72, and in June of 72, I started reading Bhagavad Gita and all the Prabhupada's books that were available. And I did that for 6 months straight, 4 hours a day. So I did that 4 hours a day for 6 months straight before even going to a temple, bhakti center, or gathering of any type. I just did it all on my own. So I thought, this is the best way to sort myself out. I've got to find out all about this Krishna consciousness. I love the books. I thought, I've never seen any books like this. I've had the best education in the world, but I've never seen knowledge like this before. But I was a bit skeptical about devotees. They're kind of dreamy. Do they actually do anything practical for the world? As if I was doing something for the world. But that was my prejudgment, that they're kind of dreamy, counterculturals. What are they actually doing to help humanity? What are they actually doing to solve the world's problems? So yes, I can understand that. Parents start getting nervous when you graduated from university and you haven't jumped right into the workplace. But I was starting to assert my independence, like, hey, if I make the wrong move now at 21, just rush into the corporate world head first, I'll be 65 or 70 years old before I come up for air. So that's a very good point you raised. Any other stories implanted in you? Yes.
My mom told me that, well, I guess lots of people maybe, that if I don't eat soup, I'm never going to grow up.
You don't eat what?
Soup.
Soup?
Can work with vegetable, but it was mainly soup.
Soup with vegetables, that's
Yeah.
that you wouldn't
It's
grow
very
up.
small, but it's a lot and it's still small.
Anyone else? Yes.
I remember distinctly when I stopped going out on a Friday night, my friends would say, you're boring, or if you don't go out on a Friday night, you'll be considered boring, no one will want to hang out with you. So that
Why did you stop?
I found something higher.
I think social media plays a massive role in what everyone thinks happiness is. So nowadays, everyone's saying we're entering like the plastic era, where your image is more important than who you really are.
So, are you managing your personal brand? You should be in anxiety about your personal brand, how you're being perceived, your market value. Yeah.
I think one thing that many of us have been told is to try and keep as many doors open as possible. Like, keep as many options open.
In terms of what?
Just with everything.
Everything. Relationships.
Yeah, keep it.
Jobs.
I think that's a general kind of with career opportunities, whatever. Just try and keep as many doors open as possible.
Yes, because that's considered a part of happiness. Although happiness is a very murky thing that is hard for people to define. One way when they think about it halfway is that happiness means you have options. You don't want to feel trapped. You want relationship options. You don't want to be trapped with one person. You want job options. You don't want to be trapped in one particular career path. There could be other exciting career paths opening up. You want to be positioned to take advantage of those. So you always have to be worried about your positioning, right? In terms of relationships, are you positioned to get the best relationship? Are you positioned to get the best job? Are you positioned to take advantage of the latest swing in the housing market? You always have to be careful about your positioning. Any other stories? This is very therapeutic, isn't it? Yes.
I have a question.
No, you just want to get the stories out. There'll be time for questions. Yes.
That you have to get married and have children while you're young, as a female, and then after you have kids, that's it, your life's over.
So how do you handle that story?
That's a difficult one, especially. It's like, so I just went to a wedding recently,
Hmm.
and you know during the speech they make jokes how after you get married it all goes downhill from there. You'll have arguments and this, that, the other, and it's not something that. So you have that, and then on the other side you see all this romance and everything's perfect. You fall in love, so it's a bit counterintuitive with what you're hearing from both ends. It's
So what to do?
not make assumptions, I guess. Go in with a more open mind than having expectations.
Go in with a more open mind. How does that look like?
Yeah, so to not have expectations that, oh, it should be like this. So just build and develop as it goes along, I guess.
Is that really humanly possible? Sounds good, but
I guess
you know, you got the passions, the hormones, the emotions, you know.
everything starts with trying.
So your point is that there's so many assumptions about marriage that you're going to chart your own course.
No, it's just interesting what we hear and then what that puts in our mind.
Yes, of course. Maybe you heard me explain before you know, with statistics, it's possible to calculate everything these days. And scientists have calculated the global average for the duration of romantic feelings. Do you know what it is?
Is it the like honeymoon phase after?
Romance phase. Whether the honeymoon or not, the romance phase.
Yeah, so not your actual honeymoon after you get married, it's when you get in a relationship, you have your honeymoon.
Married or not, the
Yeah.
romance stage, you know. You know what the global average is? 17 months. That means some can be more, some less. But that romance feeling when you're flying, like, wow. I don't know, but that's what the movies say. 17 months. So yes, if you plan on being in a lasting relationship, you have to handle that. And you're right. Relationships are loaded with so many assumptions, so many stories that you're bringing to the table. Your expectations from what you saw in your parents, or what you didn't see in your parents. I'm going to do it right. My parents screwed it up, but I'm going to do it right. Anything else? Yeah?
I always got told I was too soft and I needed to look after myself first, stop trying to help other people. You know, that you need to look after yourself first and foremost, then if you want, help other people, but don't get the two mixed up. Don't be soft.
You have to have options, and then you can help others to have options. The more options you have, the more happy and successful your life will be. Of course, bhakti knowledge will teach you that although material life seems to have so many possible options, the options are very few. Material happiness is a very limited substance. Should we dare to ask you at this point now whether you think these stories that have been loaded into you are good or bad? Should we make some judgment? You say yes? Well, what's your judgment based on what you've heard?
They're funny.
They're funny.
They had their time, place. So mainly, I would say, probably bad judgment, some of them. Especially the one about what I said, you know, if you don't go too deep into spirituality, it's like saying, well, do 1 year of university and don't do the rest and you'd be classed as a qualified person. It doesn't work like that.
Yes, because the bhakti knowledge gives you the ability to balance. How can you balance if you only know one side? If you only know the material side, what are you balancing the material side with? In order to understand how to balance, you need to take your knowledge from the source of the material and the spiritual. Krishna can teach you how to balance because Krishna is the source of both sides of the scale. But you can't expect a materialist to teach you how to balance because they only know one side. So the bhakti advantage is learn your balance from Krishna, the source of all the energies. And then you can learn how to handle all the energies that emanate from Krishna. Did you make any judgments about the stories that have been downloaded into you? Yes?
I think they're good for like achieving milestones, like, okay, I want to graduate, I want to get rich, and I want to have a family. But if you want to discover yourself or actually be happy, then they're not good because you're just moving with the crowd. So you're not actually going to achieve anything that you want personally.
We'll be discussing this week. When do you decide to jettison those stories? Or when do you decide to dig them up and toss them out? Would that be disrespectful to society, to your family, to your friends? And where do you get the support necessary to make your own story? Or as Krishna says at the end of Bhagavad Gita, drop your stories and accept my story. I'll protect you, don't worry. Where do we get the strength and support to do that? Otherwise, it's going to seem a little scary, isn't it? Shedding all these stories. And certainly we want to recognize that those who have implanted these stories in you thought they were acting for your good. For example, those who told you don't go too deep into spirituality, they thought they were acting for your good. But we hope the value of this week will be that we can take an impartial, unbiased look at all the stories and look at life from beginning to end, birth to death, and see where you want to really go. What's truly valuable for you? And of course we want you to see that how can you understand you without understanding the Supreme that you're part of? Therefore self-realization and Krishna consciousness go hand in hand. Just as the part is hand in hand with the complete whole. So the themes we're going to continue to pursue are, what is happiness? What is success? What will happiness and success look like in your old age and at the time of death? We're going to show some reality videos about old age, some reality videos about persons facing death. We'll look at some video clips about very successful persons who don't look very happy at all. You're going to hear from the co-founder of PayPal, who was in his 20s when he founded PayPal and then sold the company for a huge amount. And he's going to tell you how it was the most miserable moment, the most miserable year of his life. What do you mean? You just made off with a huge killing. You're a young guy. You're a multi-millionaire in your 20s. But you'll hear him explain why he was so miserable. We want to consider the whole life experience from different angles. And then we can start to truly appreciate what Krishna has on offer. So the science of bhakti is not sentiment. It gives you the ability to analyze materially and spiritually. All right, before we break, any last questions? So I hope you're ready for the adventure for this week. Yes?
I have a question. When you talk about Krishna, what exactly do you mean?
Krishna literally means the unlimitedly attractive source of all pleasure. That's the ultimate goal of yoga. The ultimate connection with the ultimate source of all energies, and those energies include pleasure and knowledge.
Where does it or he reside?
If time and space emanate from Krishna, then time and space place no restriction on Krishna. You, as the spirit soul, actually don't reside anywhere, in that you're not bound to matter, but due to mistaken identity, we identify with the body as our residence, as our home. So we need to be educated about the spiritual science, and then we see that time and space have no restriction upon the spirit soul, and what to speak of on the supreme soul. We need to be educated about the soul and the supreme soul. So when we talk about the bhakti knowledge, the Krishna conscious knowledge, we're talking about the world's most comprehensive, profound system of spiritual knowledge. Everyone here has studied something before? You understand there's knowledge available about so many things. Similarly, there is knowledge available about the ultimate source. We may not be familiar with it, but still it's available. I decided to become acquainted with that greatest storehouse of knowledge and the lifestyle based on it. It's not about religious belief. Nowhere in Bhagavad Gita, the prime bhakti text, does Krishna ask you to believe in it. The bhakti knowledge gives you laboratory experience. That sounds fair enough, doesn't it? Okay. So therefore we simply say, give Krishna a fair go. We're not talking about religious exhortation, religious belief. We're talking about entering the bhakti laboratory, applying your senses according to the knowledge, and getting the result. Yeah.
So, if my soul has no place in which it resides, could it be moving through you? And could your soul be moving through me? Or moving through everything?
Those are material questions based on time and space. Both the material and the spiritual have an ultimate controller. So it's not that everything happens randomly. Your spirit soul is associated with that particular body for a particular time. But actually there's never any connection between your spirit self and your material body. There's an imaginary connection. You're dreaming that there's a connection. So time and space considerations apply on the material plane. But even the spiritual plane has a controller. Krishna is the controller of Krishna. So it's not that everything happens in a willy-nilly way. Random interactions. To the uneducated eye, it may seem like that. But to those who know the supreme spiritual science. They see the harmony in everything. They see how everything is regulated and under control. Even the apparent randomness of interactions. So those are deep questions, very good. So we'll meet again tonight, and we'll see what, hopefully we'll have our video set up ready tonight. And we'll begin to go further in our journey. Thank you very much for your kind attention.